Hey there everyone, Paler here, and welcome back. We're talking Star Citizen again today, but before we get into that, I want to talk about the background footage a little bit. This is the For Honor beta. Here's what I'm thinking. You can only watch so much of me playing Arena Commander, Star Marine, doing the same old things in Crusader, Olisar, and all of that. So I'm just trying to mix it up. Let me know, does it work, doesn't it work, does it make sense? Is it better to show more Star Citizen footage because we're talking about Star Citizen even though there's nothing really original in it? Or does this work just fine? I will say this for the For Honor beta, everything you're going to see here is me fighting against AI opponents. For some reason, the matchmaking right now doesn't seem to be working. But it is beta, so yeah, even though it's out in like 20 days, it's still beta. Okay, let's get on to today's subject. And that subject is a very general one, Chris Roberts. I want to talk today about some of the things I see with Chris Roberts and how much of his personality and what he brings to the table is both good, but also concerning. Not necessarily bad, but concerning. On the front end of this, the straight up good is his seniorship, his veterancy, his experience within the industry. When he first did the Kickstarter video, the I Want to Build You a Universe video, if I just watched that and if it wasn't from someone with his type of experience, I probably would have dismissed Star Citizen outright. I never would have backed it or anything like that. And when I first watched it, I didn't actually recognize his name, though as soon as I pulled up his biography and I saw all the Wing Commander games, I saw Freelancer, Starlancer, there were some ties to some of the Jane's Combat games, which were amazing fighter jet simulators, early, mid-90s. Like, instantly seeing that gave the game some legitimacy. It got even better when I noticed for the last 5 or 6 games that he created, he was either lead designer or in charge of overseeing the entire thing. He wasn't an artist or a coder or game tester, nothing wrong with those, but he was someone that was in the management position, in the position of driving the vision of those last few games. It's an important distinction to make because you can be one of the best coders in the world. You can be amazing at creating these awesome game elements and designs, but that doesn't mean you're going to have the skills that translate over to leading up a development team for making a game, especially a game of this scale. So right off the bat, all of that was good, and the fact that it was coming from someone like Chris gave the game, for me, legitimacy and got me to actually back the game, get invested in the game, and start following it right up front. I don't really see any negatives on this. That's why I got that out of the way. And it's not even really a personality trait. It's just his history. It is what it is. In terms of personality traits, so the things I want to talk about that are both good yet concerning come down to several things. Ego. I think unquestionably Chris has an ego. Now, I've never met Chris. I've never interviewed him, talked to him, anything like that. But if you watch a lot of his interviews, a lot of his presentations for the Gamescom, for CitizenCon, everything, it comes across to me that he's got a fairly big ego. Perhaps not the biggest out there by no means, but the man is definitely a bit egotistical. A lot of people are going to think that I mean this in a negative way. I don't actually. I would point out that if we look at the successful people in the world, almost entirely all of them have big egos. Be it in the world of business, your CEOs, your high-ranking people within your large companies, your billionaires and all of that, they all have big egos. If you look at your sports figures, the best sports figures in the world tend to have big egos about them. An ego is not inherently a bad thing. An ego can be tough to work with. If you're someone that has to deal with that person with that big ego, it can grate on you, it can be really tough, but having someone in charge with that ego isn't necessarily a bad thing. In fact, you would argue that the ego is part of what helps to get them where they are. Without that confidence, that egotistical confidence in themselves, they're probably not going to make it to the top of the food chain, to the highest peaks of their profession without it. So I consider ego, by and large, to be a good thing, though you do have to sometimes keep it in check, and we'll come back to that. Outside of ego, the guy seems to have passion, a lot of passion, especially for things like Star Citizen, the Wing Commander series, and all of that. He's very passionate about science fiction and creating these universes. Now, this one is far more subjective in my opinion, and I could even see people coming in and thinking he's faking the passion. And on the surface, that is definitely a possibility. However, when I look at it and we figure that this game's been in development for 4 years now, a little over 4 years actually, we're up to like 4 years, 3 months, 4 years, 4 months of development time. If he was being fake, false about his passion for this game, at some point it would have slipped. At some point it would have cracked. We would have seen through it all. He would have got caught at a bar with someone with a cell phone camera going, saying something he wasn't supposed to, or something would have happened in the last 4 years. The fact that he still comes on almost weekly when they do their podcasts and all that, and shows that same amount of passion, that same level of desire, tells me it's legit. It tells me it is truly there. It's not something he is faking. After passion, he seems to be a bit of a perfectionist. He has a lot of ambition, and these two would tie together, ambition and perfectionist tied together. And this really starts to get into areas where it's both a positive, but also an area of concern. Perfectionist, that's great. Ambition, that is also great. That means Star Citizen has the chance to be something like none of us have ever experienced before. It has a chance to be one of those games that revolutionizes the industry. One of those games that we see every 6 to 10 years, that just once they hit, everything else changes about them. The whole industry reacts to it. We look at Modern Warfare, the first Modern Warfare, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. We look at World of Warcraft. We're still, to this day, seeing repercussions of the launch of World of Warcraft and how that changed the MMO industry. We're mostly past it, but we're still seeing it to some extent. We're still, to this day, seeing how Call of Duty brought about the multiplayer, the online revolution, and really pushed that with the first-person shooter. Look at every top-year gaming list and all the sales charts and everything. That is driving publishers and developers and how they develop their games. It changed the industry. Going back before that, games like Super Mario 64, and before that, Super Mario World. Nintendo, for a long time, was a developer that changed the industry when it released games like that. Zelda, Ocarina of Time was one of them. Star Citizen has the chance to be that because Chris Roberts has this ambition, has this drive for perfection. These are good things. The concern, the area where we got to be aware, though, is when you bring this all together and put Chris Roberts in charge with nobody over top of him. You have a guy with an ego, with passion, a drive, and a perfectionist type attitude. It means the possibilities are amazing, but it also means the chance for failure is definitely something we can't overlook. I'm going to use an analogy here and compare him with someone else, and please hear me out. I'm not saying this has happened. I'm saying this could happen. He could become the next Peter Molyneux. Peter Molyneux had a lot of the same things. Coming out of Populous and the success of that, moving into the Black and White series and everything, the guy went from being basically the lead game designer, and he became the president of his company. And when this happened, and Peter Molyneux has a lot of the same traits, a big ego, he's very driven. Peter Molyneux is one of those type that he thinks outside the box. He's constantly trying to do new things with his games and everything. And when he went and became the president, was no longer had anyone over top of him, that's when we started to really see issues come through with Peter Molyneux's games. He started promising things that he could not deliver. The concern I have is the same thing could happen with Chris Roberts. For me, in a perfect world, Chris Roberts needs someone that's a bit of a pragmatist above him to keep him in check. We want Chris Roberts to be in charge of the primary game design elements, the primary motivating factors behind it, the primary focus. But I wonder if it wouldn't be better if we had someone above him just to keep him a little bit in check. The same way Peter Molyneux needed someone to keep him a little bit in check. The same way someone like George Lucas seems to need someone to keep him a little bit in check. And when Chris Roberts right now, he answers to no one. Really? If we think about it, I mean, on paper, you would say he answers to us, the backers, the people that have donated the money. If he wants to continue to see money donated, we need to see things back from him the way we'd like to. But that's very superficial. We're not investors. We don't have that means of feedback from him and everything. And they do try and give us that feedback. I'm not knocking that. But he doesn't answer to us. If he decides he wants to pursue X agenda with that money, we have nothing we can do to stop him. He's going to pursue it. The only thing we can do is not give him additional money to pursue that agenda. This is different from being a number 2 and having a president, CEO, someone above him that can directly overrule him. It's very much different. So we have to be aware of this, I think, as consumers, as backers, as supporters of this game. We have to keep an eye on it. And a lot of this comes down to, I can't be the only one that's noticed, they never seem to say no, do they? CIG, you almost never see them say no when it comes to a game idea. There were several recent examples of this, but it ties in with the content bloat that I think a lot of us have seen going on in the game, and the more and more stretch goals and constantly promising more and more things. And again, if we look at it, there's both positives and negatives. On the positive side, if they do deliver these things, if they manage to come through, the possibility for this game is ridiculous. But every additional item, every additional concept they bring is another place where they can stumble. It's another chance for failure. It's another chance for everything to just go wrong in this game. I'm an engineer, and so one of the big things I live by is keep it simple, stupid, the KISS effect. Well, every new layer they're adding on top of it, the game is becoming more complex, more robust, and there's more places for one little problem on the back end to screw everything up going forward. Now, engineering is completely, quite a bit different from programming. You can't really go back and just overhaul code, or you can go back and overhaul code a lot better than you can go back and re-engineer something from the ground up, which requires an entire new set of things. But it's something to keep in mind with that. There's some good possibilities here, though. The one thing I do want to point out is Chris does have himself somewhat surrounded with people that we hope can maybe tell him, hey, tone it back a little bit, calm down, say no. Obviously, his wife is right there with him. We see her in basically every one of the Around the Verses. His brother works for him too. His brother is running one of the European studios. And he also has, I forget the guy's name, a longtime companion that's worked with him way back with the Wing Commanders. They've been working together like 20 years. He's in charge of one of the other European offices. So he has long-term, he has family, his wife, and then a long-term friend working very closely with him. Hopefully they can stand up to him, and if he goes off the deep end, they can say, hey, you're promising too much. I'm not sure they would do it, though. Right now, they seem to be drinking the Kool-Aid as much as him. I was going on a little tangent there for a moment, but I remember there was a video around November of last year, and it was the Q&A for the subscriber town hall Q&A mission, and the question came up, I'm paraphrasing here, something to the effect of, they wanted to play Stardew Valley within the game. Essentially, they wanted to take their ship, fly off to a random remote part of some planet, settle down, set up a farm, live off the land, and just not be bothered with any of the rest going on in Star Citizen. They wanted to know if they were going to be able to do that. And I'm sitting there listening to this video, and in my mind I'm saying, please say no, please say no, please say no. Not because I don't want the player to be able to do that, but because the systems that would need to be put in place in order for this type of gameplay, let's not be promising those. Say, we'll look at that in 5 years from now, after the base launch of the game. That would be an acceptable answer. Or no, that's not really the scope we're going for Star Citizen. Again, to me, that would be an acceptable answer. But they basically gave this around the bush, yeah, you can do that because this, and you might have someone show up to see you because they're looking for rare metals and they might come across you in that. But the basic answer was, yeah, you're going to be able to do that within Star Citizen. And I was like, while it's nice that they're saying that, but yep, there's another thing that they've just said they're going to be able to do within Star Citizen, and they didn't preference it by saying years down the line, post-launch or anything. It was just that. In fact, just yesterday they did another one, and this wasn't Chris Roberts talking, but I think it does show the mentality that he brings and how everyone in the upper management of CIG is operating. They were talking about the AI. And they were talking about how they want to put into place basically a system that reminds me a lot of the Nemesis system from Shadow of Mordor, where you're going to have like a history with certain people you come across. So you get killed by a pirate, that pirate might remember you, or you kill like the pirate's friend, where they'll remember you, and you might run into that person again later on, and they'll remember within game who that is and put it back up so that guy appears again within your game later on. Sounds awesome. It sounds great, and hopefully they can do it. The thing was, they didn't promise this for post-launch. They didn't promise this for 5-6 years down the line. Now, to be fair, they didn't promise it, but they said it's something they want to focus on in the next 2 or 3 years. And I was just like, really? We haven't even begun to see the AI system. And maybe they can do it. I'm not knocking them for saying it. It's just yet another thing on the content bloat list that they're saying things they're going to try and do. And that's where the concern comes in. Overall, like, I'm very happy with the development of the game. I talked about a lot of this in my looking back video, and well, the game's definitely not where it had been promised to be. I still think we're right on track where it could be. And while I do think 2017 is an important year, like, I think things are positive overall for the game and what we're seeing going forward. I don't mean this video to be that. It just, the big concern, like, if this thing is going to fall apart, it's going to be because Chris Roberts doesn't know when to stop, and there's no one above him to say, hey, stop trying to go farther. Let's finish what we currently have and then worry about that post-launch. The last thing I wanted to address very briefly is something that has come up, and it doesn't really tie in with a personality trait or anything like that, but there's this common theme that naysayers believe Chris Roberts is just going to take the money out of the bank account, go buy an island, and disappear. And I kind of want to just dismiss that as completely laughable and dumb. For several reasons. One, if he was going to do this, it would have happened a long time ago. You don't put up with the crap that he's gone through, all the questions, the naysayers, the positivity, and the negativity, a lot of negativity for 4 years for that amount of money. Chris is already a wealthy man. He might not have $140 million, but he's already well off. He doesn't need this game. He doesn't need that money. But furthermore, he doesn't have no $140 million in some bank account to pay for Star Citizen and the development of it. The cost of developing this game is quickly cutting into that. I would guess, realistically, they have less than they've used at least half of the money so far. If you think about it, they're running 4 studios. That's the rent lease on 4 different buildings, all the computers, all the equipments for all the different people. They're paying the salaries of 250, 300 people. They've paid for voice lines from Mark Hamill and a bunch of other different voice actors. They've done all of the motion capture. That motion capture, those cameras and stuff, that equipment is not cheap, either if they're buying it outright to do it themselves or if they're renting the studio and paying a studio in order to do it. They've paid to have 2 entire alien languages developed for the game. There's no $140 million left. If he was going to cut and run, he would have done it 2 years ago before he expanded the studios to this size. At this point, he's losing money, not gaining money by doing this. So it just doesn't make sense for this point. Also, if this thing is for him to get rich, developing and releasing a good game is going to be worth far more than whatever he gets from the backers, the funding of this game. If Star Citizen turns out to be what it possibly could be, he could sell the game to EA for $1 billion. And that's going to be far more than the $140, $200 million he's going to get from the crowdfunding. If this is what he's after, if he's just trying to get rich off of this, that's the way he's going to go about it. And he's got every right to do it. I'd be disappointed to have EA in charge of Star Citizen, but that's the more intelligent way to do it. All right, so that's what I have to say about Chris Roberts. I think it's great, mostly positive, but areas of concern. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Agree, disagree. How did the For Honor footage work with the different video? Is it okay, or should I go back to other Star Citizen footage when I do this next time? Until then, though, this has been Pallard. Thanks for watching.